This is the Voice of Early Childhood podcast. A quick hello from me to all of the listeners. I'm here to share that this episode is sponsored by My Mood Stars. My Mood Stars are resources that have been created to support emotional development and, importantly, encourage children to talk about their feelings and emotions, which really links to this episode where Dawn Jones discusses research findings around the use of reward charts and various other behaviour management strategies commonly used in early years settings and schools. More specifically, Dawn and her team looked into gaining children's perceptions around behaviour management systems, so really listening to children's voices and their feelings surrounding this topic. But I won't give away too much. Take a listen for yourselves, and you can find a link to My Mood Stars in the episode description. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Voice of Early Childhood podcast. My name is Angelica Solinska. I'm your host, and today I'm joined by Dawn Jones, who is Early Childhood Studies Programme Lead and Senior Lecturer at the University of Wolverhampton. So thank you very much, Dawn, for joining today.
Oh, it's lovely. Thank you for having me back, Angelica. I didn't put you off the last time.
No, definitely not. We had a brilliant conversation, and I was just actually looking at my notes from the last episode and looking at all the lovely snippets of the lovely quotes that you said that I noted down. So yeah, that was brilliant. I'm going to be remembering them and putting them into conversations. Referencing you.
Oh, yeah, that would be brilliant. Yeah, hopefully there might be a few more today. Who knows?
Yes, I'm looking forward to the discussion today, and it is quite an interesting one. It's all about reward charts, certificates, and children's self-perception. So this stemmed from your research, which was around what I really think about sitting straight, golden time, and reward charts, gathering 4-year-olds' views on behaviourist pedagogy in reception. So very intriguing topic, and I know it can be a little bit touchy and maybe controversial in terms of behaviour charts, behaviour management. So would you like to give us firstly a little bit of kind of background and context of this research?
Well, it all really started, as all research does, from being nosy and on observing and actually listening to children. And my grandson had started school. He was a July birthday, so quite early, and he was really struggling with this idea of golden time, and the idea that you go to school on Monday, and every time something not quite nice happens, that time gets taken away, and so by the time you get to Friday, sometimes children don't have any time left, so they don't have golden time. Right. But the concept of a whole week of time, what is time to a young child, and do they remember what happened on a Monday by the time they get to a Friday? And I started to think about all of these things and the injustice for some children, because for some children, sitting still or conforming for a whole day, for a whole 4 or 5 days is just, it's unattainable. And where's the fairness? Where's the fairness? And so I thought, I wonder if that's sort of a similar experience for a lot of children, or is this just because we don't conform as a family, but is it just my grandchildren, or so I was just interested in that, and that's how this research came about, really, from that conversation with a 4-year-old, and I just wanted to understand, well, how do they feel? What is it that is going on? What kind of approaches are used? And it was, as I said, this research was done across 3 schools. So it was done in West Wales, Mid Wales, and in the West Midlands. And it was done with reception age children. So there's 3 different geographical locations, all based within reception classes. And we gathered the thoughts and ideas, and as I talked the last time, through children drawing, then through children using the cameras and taking pictures, and then through them discussing and sharing their ideas on those pictures. We then sort of found out their ideas And that's really, without going into too much detail, that's research really.
Mm-hmm. And so first I'd like to say it's fantastic that this research came from a 4-year-old and, from your grandson and you actually listening to him. So that's, the whole research is about listening to children, and the fact that it stemmed from a child just really brings it all together in terms of how authentic, genuine it really is, rather than just, oh, we need to listen to children more, and these are ethical methods, so let's kind of bring children in to do this research. It stemmed from the child, which is so great to hear. And then the second thing, actually, you mentioned golden times, and I guess people call it different things. Not everyone knows what this is, perhaps, especially internationally, and those who listen to the podcast. So can you just explain what this is, and perhaps exactly what it is, in that school particularly, because it may be different in other schools?
Yeah, it's termed as within this particular school, it was termed as golden time, and I know that the school in West Wales had a similar term for it. And basically, what it is that the children start off at the start of the week on a Monday with a clean slate, so to speak. But every time there's a misdemeanor, so every time perhaps they're wriggling on the mat, or perhaps they push somebody in a queue, or they speak without being asked to, they raise their hand and they have to be chosen, then time is taken away. So it could be that they have 5 minutes taken away, or 10 minutes on a Monday. So time is taken away. So by the time they get to a Friday, this golden time is on a Friday afternoon, and they're allowed, I think it's 3/4 of an hour to an hour of time to go outside and to play on bikes, or to have freedom of choice around a play for an hour on a Friday afternoon. But for many children, it seems that by the time they get to Friday, they have very little time. So some children might have 5 or 10 minutes, and some children have none at all. And I was really quite concerned about that. And the other classroom within the school, because I worked with 2 reception classrooms, one was in the Welsh and one was in the English, had an actual chart on the wall, which had sunshine and then different coloured clouds, until at the end there was like a thunder cloud, and it was a black thunder cloud with lightning through it. And depending on where your peg was, and the children were identified through pegs, would mean, could you go out for your golden time or not? And the conversations that the children had with me were really quite, they were really interesting, but really worrying and concerning, that our education system is based upon this really authoritarian and unfair system. So that's what golden time is. Sorry, I've gone off on a tangent.
No, it's okay. You're going off into the findings already. But I just wanted to kind of touch on what golden time is as a concept itself, to kind of really problematize it before going more into the findings, because actually what you described there, that freedom of choice of play, this surely should be normal for 4-year-olds anyway, in terms of, they should be getting plenty of this freedom of choice, this play where it is learning for them, the free play. And actually, if those children who are perhaps a little bit more disruptive or maybe dysregulated, they need more of that kind of time, more time outdoors, more time in that space and freedom and that free play. And perhaps this is a sign, the fact that they're being disruptive or whatever the rules are, and they're not conforming to those rules. Maybe this is a sign of that they need space and freedom of choice, and it's communication. And people do say behaviour is communication. So instead of listening to the child and their voice and their behaviour, I guess, we are, as educators, punishing children and saying you're not allowed to have this freedom of choice, you're not allowed to have this free play, which is actually a lot more developmentally appropriate for you. And this is how you should be learning all the time. It's just crazy. And I do remember golden time at schools when I was working in settings and different schools, and it was just always so sad to see that, thinking, but they clearly need this, like they need a break. Sometimes when we as adults are working, perhaps like at the desk, we were just talking about marking, um, dissertations um, and essays and things, and sometimes we've been sitting there for hours and we need a break, we need to go for a little walk, or we just need to walk downstairs or whatever it is, and we allow ourselves that time, but we don't for children, and they need more of that, more breaks, more of that time, more of that freedom. So yeah, that's just such a sad thing to hear, isn't it? How inappropriate, developmentally inappropriate it is.
And it seems to be that what I was really interested in is that this is an accepted approach, and that nobody, oh yeah, golden time. It seemed that this is what we do and this is how it's done. And the expectation placed upon children of 4 of sitting very still and waiting for very long periods of time, because we have to remember that, 10 minutes for a 4-year-old or a 4.5-year-old is a very long time, especially when you are your bottom's coming off of that carpet, your hand is up, going like this, and you've got these wonderful things you want to share, and nobody is listening to you. And I think, some of the things that the one little boy said to me is that, but I have things to say. I have things to say and nobody listens.
Oh, no.
I thought that's really profound. That is that's really profound. And it's something that, I feel, yes, I've got something that I need to say here. Excuse me, you're not listening to me. And there's a real power imbalance. And yeah, it was very it was very concerning to us as researchers, actually, out of all the lovely stuff that we have got from the research. This was one aspect where we thought, yes, this is something that we need to now work with and go further. And that, obviously, we'll talk again on that, but that's something that I am going to be doing more research on with the schools and the children. But the thing that was really worrying was, as you were saying, is that the very children that needed access to these spaces and to this freedom and to have that play were denied it.
In some instances,
they had these were the children that really needed that, were denied that, and it didn't make sense to them. It didn't make any sense. So by the time you've got to Friday, they couldn't remember about Monday and weren't altogether sure why they weren't outside. And I think the conversation was, oh, well, I've tried really hard. I tried really hard, but I'm not going to have it again, am I? And it was, despite them really trying to do all of these things that adults wanted, they just weren't developmentally ready and they weren't quite able to do it. And it was this acceptance of, well, I'm no good. I've tried really hard and it's just not good enough. And I can't play on the bike because the bike was, that was something that was really important, or the ball, whatever aspect of play. And I thought that perception for a child of 4 to feel like that was quite difficult for me as somebody who's worked in early years. And I thought, oh my goodness, I wouldn't want I don't want children to feel that way. And I'm quite sure that teachers and teaching us and all the people that care for them wouldn't. But it was almost this lack of understanding of the profoundness of this approach and all the implications that it had. And I think that's what's really interesting. And that's what the researchers perhaps enabled us to do, to go in and sort of start pulling those threads and start saying, right, okay, then have we thought about it in this way? And what we're finding is, oh no, I hadn't thought it like that. So that's where we are with it, really.
Hi, it's Angelica here. Thank you all for listening in. I'm here to ask for a quick favour from the early years community. In order for the Voice of Early Childhood to continue creating free, valuable content and sharing voices, we need your help. Please hit the subscribe button wherever you're listening on. And if you are listening on a podcast platform, then check out and subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can not only listen, but also watch the podcast and really focus in on the discussions. Or if you are viewing on YouTube already, remember that you can also find us on 19 different podcast platforms. Simply search for The Voice of Early Childhood and subscribe to get a brand new episode every Monday morning, ready for your morning commute or however you start your week. And as always, do share the podcast with colleagues, friends, and parents of young children. We have a lot of interested parents and family members listening in and reading the articles. So let's ensure more of them can access the free content. Let's encourage them to engage and keep these thought-provoking discussions going. Enjoy the rest of the episode. I just thought it's really interesting that, you mentioned that children don't necessarily kind of remember what happened on a Monday. And, they're actually working with consequences from days ago. And even if they've been good, so to speak, if they've been following all the rules, the rest of the week, they still have those consequences from the one time days ago. And this actually reminded me, when you said children kind of think, oh, well, I have tried, but I kind of can't really do anything about this now kind of thing. It reminded me of a conversation I had with Dr. Sue Allen on learned helplessness. And we were just talking about how profound that is in terms of, children just feeling that, or like kind of giving up really, and the fact that they can't do anything about this situation, and they shouldn't try anymore. They shouldn't try harder, or they shouldn't try to have their voice heard, or maybe they shouldn't even try and to display positive behavior at all.
Yeah, because they're not getting, and I don't want to say, I want to say that they should be rewarded, as in the case of these certificates and all of this malarkey. But the fact of, I think the reward for children is, in my understanding, is somebody actually listened to them, and if somebody actually listened to what it is that they're saying, responded to that and acted on it, then I feel that, what a fantastic education system we might have. And I think, and that's really what I'm sort of really interested in. The end goal is having, is using this research really, and using their voice, and trying to help others understand the importance of it. And I think in respect to the detrimental effect it has, not only on the child, but on the perception of that child with peers. And that was really, it's not something that I was expecting, but I think I spent, it must have been about half an hour with 3 4-year-olds in a classroom, and they were absolutely animated, taking me through this chart on the wall with the clouds and what these pegs were. They knew exactly whose peg, even though it wasn't, there was
so they didn't have names.
No.
Oh, I see.
They knew who the pegs were, and oh well, he's always down there. He'll be down there by Friday, won't he? And I was going, oh goodness, oh, he's useless. He never behaves. He can't do this. He can't. And it was a really quite, they had quite a negative perception.
And I guess some of that language may have come from the educators themselves, the teachers themselves may be sharing that with each other, unfortunately. And it's just so negative and like downgrading, I guess, isn't it? And
it was, I'm just trying to think if I've got actually what some of the thing,
just that kind of public shaming, really, isn't it? It's really concerning.
The concerning thing is, though, that group of peers in a class go with each other through all of the year groups. So we're talking about reception, but that follows that child into year 1, into year 2, and all the way through. And there's this perception of this self-perception for him or her, of the child, and all so of the peers and the expectations upon, and I thought that was really quite a concerning, and that was a very, I'll say that it was interesting, because it was interesting from the point of view of, okay, we need to understand this, and we need to look
Yeah.
into this more. But we all felt that this was really quite, gosh, this is a really powerful stuff, that these children at this age are already, having this sort of idea of who they are, and how well they're doing, and of their place within education.
Yes, yeah.
And others were also cementing that, and were also saying, no, you're this, because of a peg on a
Mm.
chart, so yeah, it was quite interesting. It was like, if we get our peg all the way down, we miss bike time. This is, yeah, you don't get to do anything. You have to sit on a chair and watch. And I was quite interested by
Oh,
that. And I said, what do you mean? And they said, well, we sit here and we watch the children playing outside.
that's really sad.
And I thought, gosh, it's bad enough that you're missing out on being out
Mhm.
running, doing what you developmentally should be doing. But to also, that's another level of
Mm.
almost punishment, isn't it?
Punishment.
Quite
Yeah, I was going to
punitive,
say that too.
And I'm thinking, oh, perhaps they're dramatizing, but no,
Mm.
it was fact. And if you get to the thunderstorm, apparently the thunderstorm with the lovely lightning through it, then you have to go and sit with the head teacher. So
Mm.
you have to go sit outside the office. And I was thinking, gosh, I remember that used to be the most dreaded thing in secondary school when I was,
Mm.
13 and 14. This is what children of 4 are now doing. And I thought, oh gosh, is that really what we should be doing with 4-year-olds?
And yeah, then they have this fear factor of adults and educators and head teachers, and instead of feeling in any way that those power dynamics are level at all, and there's that kind of democratic approach, it is
yeah,
very, the adults are authoritative figures, and to an extent, of course, that is important, mainly for children's safety, really, but they shouldn't be fearing adults in this way, that punishment of having to go and sit outside the head teacher's office, and yeah, it's just so unpleasant. Like
yeah,
you said, we both kind of said the word punishment, but almost didn't want to, because that's
yeah.
that's just how it sounds, doesn't it? And
Mm.
when you kind of just, when you're explaining all this, I'm just picturing it all in my head, and it's really sad, and it just seems incredibly old fashioned. And I think
Mm.
it links back to what you said at the beginning, how this is just normal, it's just accepted, and I guess no one challenges it, and we
Yeah.
just get on with it. This is golden time, and it happens in schools, and it happens in so many schools, and that's
Mm.
just how it is. Let's not even problematize it, challenge it, and to
Yeah.
even try
It's
and
it's
unpick if it's appropriate anymore.
and I think that's the key thing, is that there's this lack of understanding about the real power behind these approaches, about these
Mhm.
people say normal everyday things.
Mhm.
This is what we do, this is how we do it. And I think sometimes it's really interesting that if you do listen to children, it makes you stop and you think, hang on a minute, let me think about that, because
Mhm.
actually what they're saying, gosh, is that how that's perceived? That's not how we as educators want that to be understood. I didn't realize that. And I think that's the power of actually listening to children.
Yeah.
Is that they tell you it as it is, almost, and it's the
Mhm.
fact you need to listen to that and reflect upon it as an educator, and actually
Mhm.
think about the power behind what it is that you're doing, and that it's incredibly important, like you said, Angelica, about that balance of power.
Yes.
And at the moment, I mean, it really is, really is an imbalance in it. um, they they really didn't like the blue mat.
Yes, I
um,
was just looking at that in your article, actually, just thinking about, going back to children sitting down for periods of time, and also in
Yeah,
specific positions, which again, they're not developmentally appropriate to sit in yet, and it may be quite uncomfortable.
it's yeah, it was really interesting I was thinking about, the importance of the sensory development for, the vestibular and the proprioception, and how children need to be moving, and, doing all of this movement, hanging upside down and balance and whatever. And then I was watching them sit in this, they called it, and it was in this particular school where it was crisscross applesauce, and children
Yes, I've heard
took
that.
great delight in showing me how they had to cross their arms across them and cross their legs, and they had to sit up straight on this mat. And I thought I'd try it. And by the time I got to about 3 minutes, my back was hurting, my bottom was hurting. It was the most uncomfortable position. And I thought, to sit like this for 5 or 10 minutes is not a pleasant experience. The floor is very hard. And what was it? I don't like sitting on the blue mat. It's boring. When Miss is talking, we want to talk as well. And I thought, yeah, I can understand that. I can
Rightly
understand
so,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, that you want to share in that conversation. And then they were saying we're supposed to do it like this, and yeah, no, I don't like sitting on the mat. It's boring. When I do the register, I just go, because she was sort of saying, we have to sit there, we have to wait for everybody to say. And she goes, and by the time they get to me, I'm just bored, bored. And, I just go, because I just can't be bothered to say here, or, whatever it is, go back, whatever it was. And I was thinking, gosh, yeah. And she was really animated, and, she knew she was just telling me how she felt about this. And it's interesting that one of them said, because I was saying, this blue mat seems to be quite a tricky place. And she was saying, it's just prickly and it hurts my bottom. And it was, I'd like to sit on a chair. And I thought, yeah, why aren't we all sitting at the right height? And I think in the article, I sort of say, if we change the dynamics of what would happen if we sat with the children on the floor, I think we'd soon have chairs. What would happen if we all sat on that? And I think, okay, so there's space and there's all that kind of thing. You can't have 30 children sitting on chairs. And then I was thinking, I know. So what about thinking about how children sit on the mat? Is there a way of making it more comfortable? Have you listened to what it is that they have said or made suggestions on? And that's what I shall be working on next with 4-year-olds, redesigning their classroom. So it was so insightful, and it was just so sensible what they were saying. And I think what I do with my students, and if anyone is listening, if they want to try it out, is sit down on the floor with your legs and arms crossed, with your classroom, with your lecture, with your students, and just see how long you can and how comfortable it is, and how you want to put your leg out, or to move your arm, or to move, because every time a child has that natural need to sort of move their leg or their foot, they're told, sit straight, don't move, be quiet.
Yes.
So it's an interesting thing to do. Let's just say my students think differently about the blue mat now than perhaps they did when they went out and they were in placement, and they were sort of, oh no, you've got to sit nice and straight. So yeah, interesting what came from the dreaded blue mat.
Gosh, yeah, I'm just thinking, even of myself sat in this chair, I'm constantly kind of moving and shifting about. And at the moment, I kind of sat initially with my legs down on the floor, and now I've got one leg underneath me on the chair, because it's been about half an hour of this conversation, and I'm already kind of feeling a little bit like I need to move. And that's me being engaged and interested. But if a child is already bored, they'd want to probably lay down and start drifting off to sleep, or, fiddling about with things, of course. And some children need to, we've heard lots of different talks, certainly in the last 2 years, I'd say, talks, articles, podcast episodes, people saying that, children need to look away to concentrate better, instead of looking at the teacher perhaps, and to fiddle with things, and to sit differently. And we know more about stimming now. Before, I guess we didn't have that awareness of what stimming even is. We just thought children were fiddling and being, I guess, in quotation marks, annoying, disruptive. so there seems to be so much more understanding of development, children's development, brain development, and physical development, but we still haven't caught up with our behavior management systems at all, really.
No, and I think I think there's still a lot of, especially within perhaps reception, when we come into reception year one, the need for children's physical development is still enormous, and they need to have that, those elements of movement for these really important sensory development systems, which then do aid them to sit and to concentrate and to do all the things that we are going to want them to do later on. But there seems to be this, I don't know, this lack of understanding, and I think that's something perhaps for degree programs, for early childhood study programs, to ensure that there's the embedding of that knowledge to that underpins the importance of children having access to these different movements. And I know that many of the children actually said it hurt to sit. It was, for some children, it was uncomfortable, and they wanted to sort of, I'm trying to stretch my legs out now. I'm physically trying to do it as they were showing me. They were saying that if they did that, then they were told off. They were reprimanded, and so it was almost like, I really want to move, but I know if I do, I'm going to be, I'm going to be told off because I'm poking so and so. Which really, I wasn't poking them. I just needed to move, So that was another sort of thing that sort of came from it.
I was just going to mention how it's so interesting to hear that children are so aware of themselves and their bodies and their needs, and how they are physically feeling, and what they need to do to alleviate that, I guess, discomfort. And that's what we want children to develop. We want them to have a sense of self, to understand their bodies. But we are now stopping them with these behavior management systems, and, like you say, telling them off for wiggling about and stretching their legs. So it's the complete opposite to what we're trying to achieve, really. We're trying to achieve that help them to be independent and self-aware, and we're doing the complete opposite, in fact.
It's almost, it was really interesting that children have to have, and I think, I think Alison Clarke's book, Slow Learning, so I just think it's a fabulous book.
And slow pedagogy.
And the opening of that, where it sort of says about children are just spend so much time waiting, and they have to wait for everyone to be quiet. They have to wait in a queue and be quiet, and they have to stand, and it was, this is what I saw. This is what was, children had so much of their time wasted on waiting to do the next thing, and it was almost like there was this hurriedness, and we've got to do this, we've got to do this, and it was, they've all got to be quiet before we can do this. And there seemed to be, what she was saying was really reflected in what I saw, and it was done with the best intentions by professional people who care deeply for their children. But it was, I think it's time that we start to challenge these accepted ideas, and challenge government in way, these are the ones that it's coming top down, isn't it? And so I think we need to challenge what they're saying on how we to do things. And I think, by getting them to actually listen to children, and through perhaps empirical research, that perhaps that might lead to some really innovative changes. Wouldn't that be nice? Where we went into a classroom and children had some say in designing it. And I wonder how different it would look and how different it would be. And that's what really interests me, and what I hope would come from this research. That is the hope for it. And the only other thing really was these certificates, which were very much in line, I think, almost with the wall chart. Was one of the things that one of the children said was, we should all have them.
in terms of the certificate, like the reward certificates rather than
Yeah.
just certain
So,
children. Mm-hmm.
yeah. So at the end of the week, or, if you did something, it's usually in an assembly at the end of the week in our schools in the UK, you are celebrated, but very often, as with Golden Time, it is only certain children that can achieve that attainment, because those who perhaps can't control their behaviour in this accepted way are the ones who are never going to have a certificate,
Mm-hmm.
who were never going to have that golden time. So it was almost, it was almost like cementing that belief that some of these children were never going to have this celebration.
Yes.
And it was, they all, and I thought that was just so lovely. And I think it came from a little girl with the certificates. And I think, just trying to think if I've got it, where she said that she felt that if you behave, only if behave you get them. And I didn't have one, and I just feel sad when I don't have one. And I think we should just all have a certificate, Dawn. Just all of us. And I thought, yeah.
But she's got a very good point. And I think if we kind of unpick this a little bit more, I'm starting to think we're really comparing children. We're kind of judging them to standardized expectations. So everybody's expected to do the same thing, to achieve the same, to behave in the same way. But actually, we should be thinking about each unique child's achievement that week, I guess. And everybody gets a certificate for whatever means a lot to them in terms of what does it mean for them to have a I guess good week, or whichever way we phrase it, or a successful week, or just even that kind of, I'm thinking, is that the right way of phrasing it as well?
When you start unpicking it, and the use of language is very powerful. And I was thinking, for each, like you were saying, each individual child, their achievements are going to look and feel very different. But my goodness, every single one of them is going to do something absolutely amazing. And really, shouldn't it be up to us to notice those things? And if we are going to persist in this, let's give everybody give out certificates, then shouldn't we celebrate everybody, and not just those few? And I think, that's something to think about. And then people say, oh, yeah, but then they don't mean anything. But they perhaps don't mean anything to you as a powerful adult, because you want to reward what is, this is what you need to esteem to. Whereas for children, it's like that, wow, what have you got? You've done really well doing that. And they look at these things quite differently to us, I think.
And it's a bit like, not competing against each other, actually just setting each child, again, going back to the unique child, having their own standard, and trying to be the best they can be, or trying to progress and improve and learn new skills, etc. So that kind of mindset, that growth mindset, I guess, rather than competing against each other of who's got a certificate, who hasn't, who's done better than someone else in order to achieve the certificate.
Yeah. And I think it's really important, because I think when we do that, we're saying this is an expected standard, and we're almost like trying to normalize what is normal, what is good, what does that mean? I mean, it's it's different to how you look at it, isn't it? And I think we really need to move away from that. I mean, we need to think about being very inclusive, and celebrating children for who they're, like you were saying, their unique selves, and not trying to like put everybody in a box all the like it's like sticking them all in and churning them out, and they all come out like little robots. And you can see, like, very often people will say, he's changed so much, and I'm thinking, yeah, he's being shaped and molded into this corporate little being, isn't Yeah, sorry, but yeah, and I just think, where are their quirks? Where are their,
Mhm.
where's this creativity? Do we want these creative critical thinkers? Do we want
Mhm.
these people that are going to be divergent and who think outside of the box and who are excited and bring different things? And if we do, then I think we really need to think about what it is that we're doing, because all of these things are all molding and pushing children into this really constraint, idealistic view, I think, which I think is wrong. There you go, I
Yes,
said
yeah.
it.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I was going to say that's your view and you're entitled to your view, but I
yeah,
completely agree with your view as
yeah.
well. So,
Yeah.
yes, it's a
Everyone
very
gets
good
different.
point. Yeah,
Yeah,
but it's a very good
yeah.
point how these things kind of become very political as well. And actually, we're
Yeah,
thinking about the future
yeah.
and future life skills, and also then, well, children as current and future citizens
Mm,
of society, and rightly so. You say, although we shouldn't just be thinking about preparing children for the future, but we do
mm.
need to think, who do we want them to be as
Yeah,
future,
yeah.
grown-ups, adults, and we do want to encourage them as well as now to be innovative thinkers, critical thinkers, like you say, and all of these fantastic things and
Mm,
skills that we see that are so valuable in society and for
mm.
individuals generally. But yeah, we're not actually encouraging them. And just, I guess the main message from all of this really is the need to critically reflect on the
Yeah,
day-to-day things, the
yeah,
standardized normal things that we do.
yeah. Just think about, why do we do that?
Hmm.
Why are we doing that? How is that working? Do we need to step back perhaps and have a think about that? And actually, most importantly, is what what do the children think about that? What
Hmm.
have the children got to say that? And to collect, and to really have that open discussion. I think it would be really interesting what people would find out about about the day and the space and the routine. And I
Hmm.
think when they're first asked, children are almost, we found that when we asked them to do the pictures, they were almost reluctant to say anything bad, or anything that they might not, because they weren't quite sure, like, who is this person, when
Yeah.
building that relationship. But by the time they'd had their cameras, no hold
Mhm.
bars, it was just free fold and off we went. And yeah, everything was being shared with us. So I think, oh well, you sit on the floor with us, you're one of us, so we can share
Mhm.
with you. We can share all of these things with you. So I think, if people want to go away, take from this and think, oh, I'd like to find out what children actually think about what you might perhaps do within your practice. Um, you might find that on your first asking that you don't get much, but then as you build on that, you will find you're going to open the floodgates of some just phenomenal ideas, and these really creative little beings. They're just
Mhm.
full of these fabulous things. And I think it's almost like an enhancement of your practice. And I think it fuels you, it fills you with excitement of, oh, let's see if we can try this. And, it might work,
Mhm.
it might not, but ooh, why not? And I think that's what's exciting about it. If you're brave, I think you've got to be brave, haven't you? Got to be brave
Yes.
enough to sort of do something that's a bit dangerous, a bit risky. But
Yes.
hey, isn't that what makes a life exciting? To do things a bit differently. That's what I
For
say.
sure.
Okay.
I agree, definitely. And everything that you were just saying actually reminds me of advocacy and how Dr. Nathan Archer actually talks a lot about this, how advocacy is risky business, and it is risky to advocate and be an activist. And we're really advocating for children's rights here, children's voice, and for early childhood and for play. And doing something different in your setting is advocating, challenging standardized practice is a form of advocacy. It's not just about going out there and shouting, you know, to
Mm.
everybody. There's small acts of activism every single
Oh
day.
yeah. And I think those small ones, Angelica, I think those small ones that practitioners do within their practice, they're the ones that are the most meaningful, and they're the ones that have that ripple effect. Because if it works within one setting, it might mean that that's shared, and then that ripples, and then all of a sudden you have this wave of change. Yay, refreshing, and it's lovely, and that's what it's all about. Because that's quite powerful. That little small, that first little step. That's sometimes all it takes.
Definitely, yes. Well, I think is nice, kind of ending on more of a positive note, because obviously some of the comments shared from the children were actually really sad to hear that, and it's so important that you got their voices. But it's sad to hear that's how they feel. But it's nice to kind of end on a note of, okay, what can we do about this? And that you've shared some really useful things. And in your article as well, there's lots of critical considerations there for educators to think about. And really excited to hear more about your further project on redesigning classrooms. There's so many implications here that I'm already kind of thinking of after our discussion. So that'll be really interesting for myself to hear, and hopefully the listeners, and maybe we could have you on again and talking about that further project.
Yeah, of course, it would be lovely, Angelica. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Dawn. And I'll just say to all of the listeners to take a look at Dawn's previous article and podcast episode on 4-year-olds' reflections on their spaces and places within shared worlds. So again, really linking nicely to this episode and what we just talked about in terms of environments as well. The link is in this episode description. And there's some nice links from this episode actually to a few others that have been released in the past. Like I mentioned, Dr. Sue Allen in on learned helplessness, and actually growth mindset as well by Matt Baller. Some of the things we mentioned today really link to that. So that would be further episodes if people want to read more and find out more around kind of these topics that we're talking about. But yes, thank you very much, Dawn, once again. And we'll definitely hear from you again soon.
Thank you.